Hello there, I'm Heidi Adams in for Esther Githui Hewitt. It is Tuesday, August 2nd, and this is Africa 54.
Al-Qaeda leader Ayman Al-Zawahiri is killed in a U.S. missile strike. We'll have details. Kenya's presidential election is on August 9. We'll hear from some of the voters in Nairobi. And in our health report, the International AIDS Conference wraps up this week in Canada. We'll hear from the UN AIDS Executive Director. All this and much more on today's Africa 54.
We begin our broadcast with the death of Al-Qaeda leader Ayman Al-Zawahiri. Senior White House officials say they have concluded with, quote, high confidence that Al-Zawahiri was the only one killed in a weekend drone strike in Kabul, Afghanistan. President Joe Biden announced Monday that a U.S. strike had killed the man known as one of the world's most wanted terrorists. VOA's Anita Powell reports from Washington for us with Ayaz Gul in Islamabad.
He was the most wanted man on the planet as head of Al-Qaeda, the feared Islamist terror group that spawned franchises around the world after the stunning attacks on U.S. soil on September 11, 2001. Now, says President Joe Biden, he is no longer a threat.
Justice has been delivered, and this terrorist leader is no more. People around the world no longer need to fear the vicious and determined killer. The United States continues to demonstrate our resolve and our capacity to defend the American people against those who seek to do us harm. You know, we make it clear again tonight that no matter how long it takes, no matter where you hide, if you are a threat to our people, the United States will find you and take you out.
The Sunday morning U.S. missile strike that killed al-Zawahiri in Kabul drew the ire of the nation's Taliban government, which seized control less than a year ago after the withdrawal of U.S. and NATO troops after 2 decades in Afghanistan. Senior White House officials said the operation targeted a house in Kabul and was conducted by an unmanned aerial vehicle with no U.S. personnel on the ground. Administration officials also said they concluded with high confidence that only al-Zawahiri was killed, and that they were aware that senior members of the Taliban's Haqqani network knew he was in Afghanistan. Officials said they did not alert the Taliban before the strike. The group's spokesman condemned it as a blatant violation of international principles and the Doha Agreement, which are the 2020 talks that Taliban leaders held with U.S. and Western leaders in Qatar over the withdrawal of U.S. and allied troops the subsequent year. The U.S. invaded Afghanistan shortly after the September 11th attacks, and Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden was the prime target. U.S. forces killed him in Pakistan in 2011. Al-Zawahiri, an Egypt-born surgeon, once bin Laden's doctor, took over the terror group in 2011. Biden said the killing could lead to a new era.
Now we have eliminated the emir of Al-Qaeda. He will never again allow Afghanistan to become a terrorist safe haven, because he is gone, and we're going to make sure that nothing else happens. You know, it can't be a launching pad against the United States. We're going to see to it that won't happen.
Meanwhile, in recent years, Al-Qaeda has continued to expand in the Middle East, West and East Africa, and South Asia. Anita Powell, VOA News, Washington.
So just who was Ayman Al-Zawahiri, and how did he become one of America's most wanted men? For years, he was Osama bin Laden's right-hand man, an Egyptian eye doctor with a $25 million bounty on his head. Ayman Al-Zawahiri came from a prominent family and grew up in an upper-class neighborhood in Cairo. As a young doctor, Al-Zawahiri was attracted to radical Islamist groups calling for the overthrow of the Egyptian government. In 1991, he and others were arrested for alleged involvement in the assassination of Egyptian President Anwar Sadat, although Al-Zawahiri was eventually cleared of involvement in Sadat's killing. He met Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan in the 1980s, and the two joined forces. On Monday, U.S. President Biden said Al-Zawahiri was the mastermind behind attacks against Americans for decades. including the 1998 near-simultaneous attacks that destroyed the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania and killed 223 people. Thousands more were wounded. Al-Zawahiri is believed to be the brains behind the 9/11 attacks that killed nearly 3,000 people in New York City and propelled the U.S. into a decades-long war on terror. He became Al-Qaeda's leader after U.S. forces killed bin Laden in Pakistan in 2011. Experts say while the terror network's relevance and influence declined under Al-Zawahiri's leadership, it remains a violent presence in the Middle East and Africa. It all came to an end for the 71-year-old in Afghanistan during Hellfire missile strikes on Sunday, removing Al-Zawahiri, as President Biden put it, from the battlefield once and for all. Well, now for more on Al-Zawahiri's role in the spread of international terrorism and the implications of his death, I'm joined by Colin Clark. He's a senior fellow at the Soufan Center. He joins me live via Skype from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Colin, hello there.
Thanks for having me.
Colin, how important really and pivotal was Ayman Al-Zawahiri in spreading terrorism around the world?
Well, I think first the strike is important symbolically because of what Zawahiri represented to 9/11. Because of his role in leading the most prominent terrorist organization in the world. But he did take over from bin Laden in May 2011 and helped Al-Qaeda weather a fairly turbulent period. Remember, this is right in the beginning of the Arab Spring, and several years later, he has to contend with the rise of the Islamic State, one of the primary rivals of Al-Qaeda. These groups fought each other through their various affiliates in regions throughout the world, from the Sahel to the Horn of Africa and beyond.
Nearly all of those now who have been involved in the 9/11 attacks, Colin, have either been killed or detained, reportedly. Is Al-Zawahiri's death one of the final nails in the coffin for Al-Qaeda? I mean, they're still pretty strong in the Middle East and in parts of Africa. What is next for the terror group, and what is next for counter-terrorism in general?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say it's the final nail in the coffin. These groups continue to evolve, they continue to adapt, and we underestimate them at our own peril. Someone else will ascend to the emir of Al-Qaeda, whether a veteran jihadist like Saif al-Adil, a fellow Egyptian, or someone new. And I think we could very well see Al-Qaeda look to, its bench, so to speak, to find someone younger, someone more charismatic, and someone that's thought to appeal to the younger generation of potential jihadist recruits. You have to remember the Islamic State really eclipsed Al-Qaeda in 2014 and kind of became the top dog in the global jihadist universe. Al-Qaeda now sees an opportunity with safe haven in Afghanistan to reverse that course.
He was, of course, killed in Kabul, Afghanistan. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that the fact that he was in Afghanistan is a gross violation of the Doha Agreement. Briefly tell us what was in that agreement and how does the U.S. now, the U.S. government, deal with the Taliban going forward?
Well, the agreement, or one of the provisions in the agreement, simply stipulated that the Taliban had to sever ties with all international terrorist groups, primarily Al-Qaeda, and we know that that hasn't happened. Few counterterrorism analysts or scholars took the Taliban at their word. I think they negotiated the Doha Agreement in bad faith, and so, I certainly wasn't surprised to hear that Zawahiri was in Kabul and had maintained close intertwined links with not only the Taliban, but the Haqqani networks. Put simply, the Taliban can't be trusted, shouldn't be trusted. And it is a real dilemma for the United States, because how do you negotiate with a group that you know is constantly lying?
Of course, there are people in Africa, across Africa, who were victims of the bombings, and there's a sigh of relief today. Do you think this brings some sense of closure for at least some victims of some of the terror attacks we've seen in over the decades?
I truly hope so. I think, the victims are too often lost in the shuffle when we talk about these events. When we analyze the kind of details of these strikes and what it means for the future of global jihad. But we do have to remember the victims, and there are very real victims all over the world. Zawahiri had a lot of innocent blood on his hands. And so in my opinion, the world is truly a better place without him in it. Although, you know, we can't fool ourselves. This doesn't mean the end of jihadism, and it certainly doesn't mean the end of terrorism and political violence.
Thank you so much, Colin Clark. Colin is a senior fellow at the Sufan Center. We do thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, moving now to East Africa, where flooding in parts of eastern Uganda resulting from torrential rains have killed at least 24 people. That's according to the government and the Uganda Red Cross. Authorities say the death toll is likely to rise. Uganda's Red Cross spokesperson, Irene Nakasita, says rescuers had retrieved 21 bodies from Mbale and another 3 from Kapchorwa. The state ministry in charge of relief, disaster preparedness and refugees says flooding in parts of Bugisi, Mbale and Kapchorwa initially killed 10 people on Sunday. The torrential rains come right after a prolonged drought in vast swaths of the country that has left many areas parched and crops in fields scorched. Somalia's Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Barre on Tuesday officially unveiled his long-awaited cabinet. Prime Minister Hamza Barre named the former deputy leader of Al-Shabaab, Mukhtar Robow, as the country's new religious affairs and endowment minister, a move that one observer says might help the government in the fight against the insurgency. Robow was the co-founder and spokesperson for Al-Shabaab before he split from the group in 2013. Robow, who once had a $5 million bounty on his head, has been under house arrest for the past few years. In televised remarks, Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Barre said he selected a team that would respond to the needs of Somalia's people. Well, now the Kenya presidential election is just 1 week away on August 9th, and the race is extremely tight. Africa 54 managing editor Vincent McCory is in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, and has this report.
The Kenyan elections are taking place in about 1 week from now. Now, I've been on the streets of Nairobi talking to potential voters about what is important to them. And of course, we have met young people, older people, male and female. Here, listen to what they had to say about the upcoming elections.
I'm not interested in these elections. First, kuna advantages and disadvantages. Let me start with the advantages. In Kenya, you find that people say the same thing. If you elect me, I'll do this and this for you. But you only see that after the 5 years are ending. Like now, this is the time you see people building the highways, the everything. But the disadvantage is they only do that in the last year in order to convince you that they'll do their work or whatever. So I think it's useless for me. Just this, they do the same thing each and every time. We've not seen anything else.
Time around, if you look at the scenario, we only have at least 2 human beings, contenders. The opposition leader, the former prime minister, and the current deputy. See that? The current deputy, he has nothing special, it's nothing new to offer. Why? She's been there for the last 10 years. What is it that is now going to become the president so that he can serve Kenyans? We are not seeing anything like that. We really want the change. For this old man, he's somebody who has been championing for our rights, left and right. And he has been in opposition for such a long time. He has also suffered as a result of trying to fight for Kenyans. Now we work to reward it.
I don't feel like we are benefiting from this election. Either way, we vote or we don't, we are not represented in any way. Even when you hear the news, you hear them talking, you hear the politicians, there's nothing much that is helping us. It's mostly propaganda. So I don't think I'll be participating.
You see, the leaders we have in Kenya, they don't accept the outcome of the election. Now, they start using youths and some niggers here, fighting and throwing stones. Yeah, that's the cause of violence. It's caused by leaders, you see. Yeah. You see, some youths are learned, but don't have opportunities to have work, you see. Now youths are tired of after 5 years going to elect someone who's not focused on the youths. Yeah.
Well, Those are the thoughts of the potential voters on the streets of Nairobi in the countdown to these elections. Candidates are all over the country trying to canvass for last-minute votes. And as we know, in Kenya, elections are tension-filled. So we'll be on the streets of this country, on the streets of Nairobi, to let you know what's going on and to talk to as many people as we can for the next 14 days or so. Vincent Makori, VOA News, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, thank you for that reporting there. And Kenyans go to the polls on Tuesday, August 9th. Now, in our new election series, We Are Kenyans, VOA Swahili spoke to several Kenyans about their current challenges and their hopes for the incoming president. In our first episode, we feature local businesswoman Jacqueline Nyari.
The problem I'm seeing is the rise of the dollar, where when I'm importing things, the dollar has really gone up from purchasing the things, even shipping the commodities into the country, where it really affects my business, as where my clients, when they come, they expect the goods to be the same price as it was before. So it's really a challenge. In hospitals, we expect a lot, because sometimes you find like you go there to be attended, and then maybe you are being neglected. It's something that has happened to me before. So I can attest to that, that at least they make accessibility of the equipment in the hospital to be accessible in each and every hospital, especially the government hospitals, where you find it's a level 4, level 5, and then they don't have all the equipment. So I think that's what I'm really expecting of them. We need someone who can come and ask us if they are doing what we elected them to do. Yes, so we need that kind of a person, that kind of a relation, that we don't fear them, but we can entrust them with the work we gave them to be there. Will I vote? Not really. I think I'm not quite convinced of the next person who is going to lead us. They haven't given me a good reason to wake up and vote. If they did, I think if they did from now till the time we vote, I might vote. But the reason being, it's because I've seen things which I expected, which never happened, and things didn't turn the way I expected them to, especially when it comes to things right now are tough. So can I say they failed? According to me, they failed because they really gave us so many hopes on so many things. But right now, as we speak, things are totally tough, totally different. What I expect in these coming elections is that we have a peaceful election where everyone will go back to their normal lives and we all just do our normal doings, our business runs the way they are, and I expect that the person who is going to come in will really look at our agenda.
And And be sure to join us for Wednesday's episode of We Are Kenyans, featuring entrepreneur Jonathan Kimanzi. Well, now we're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54 and all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come here on Africa 54, health correspondent Lenore Mudu speaks with the UN AIDS Executive Director Winnie Byanyima. On the next Straight Talk Africa, we'll take a look at the information wars and the various ways political narratives can shape our perception of reality. We'll look at how this happens across Africa and in other countries around the world. And a new Voice of America documentary will introduce you to several African millionaires in the diaspora. Join me, Haiti Adams, on the next Straight Talk Africa. Well, here's a roundup of some other news you may have missed. The Democratic Republic of Congo says that 36 people, including 4 United Nations peacekeepers, died during recent anti-UN protests in the eastern parts of the country. Doctors across Sierra Leone are striking to protest low pay and a lack of benefits, leaving dozens of patients in hospital waiting rooms in need of care. And the British government says that almost 700 migrants and asylum seekers crossed the Channel to Britain on Monday, a new record for the year. Well, it is time now for our health correspondent, Lenore Mudu's health report, and she joins us right now with an update on AIDS. And we promise we didn't plan the pink. Hello, Lenore.
Hello. Of course, we didn't plan the pink, but it's good. It's a good color, right? Well, the International AIDS Conference concludes this week in Canada. The joint United Nations program on HIV/AIDS says annual new HIV transmissions have risen over several years in regions such as Eastern Europe, Latin America, and North Africa. The Philippines, Madagascar, Congo Republic, and South Sudan are among the countries which have seen the biggest increases in cases since 2015. For more insight, I spoke to UNAIDS Executive Director Winnie Byanyima.
We are sounding an alarm. The global fallout from COVID, the COVID crisis, the war in Ukraine, the social economic
And that's our interview with Winnie Byanyima. I think we're having some technical difficulties. Perhaps we'll get to have the interview later, or today or tomorrow.
Well, we will see, Lenore, if we can. We'll see, Lenore, a little bit later on if we can get that interview back. I'm not hearing anything right now that we will, but I think we will move on. South Africa's Environment Ministry says there's been an increase in the number of rhinos illegally killed for their horns, with poachers shifting their focus to private reserves in the KwaZulu-Natal province. David Doyle has more. We seem to have some more technical problems here. I'm going to throw this back to Lenore Mudu here while we wait for our technical issues to be resolved. Lenore, you spoke to Winnie Byanyima, the Executive Director of UNAIDS. What was sort of the crux of what she told you during that interview?
You know, it was very interesting when I spoke to her. She really gave me this passionate discussion about the fact that numbers are really speaking right now in terms of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, and progress made. It's as if we are losing ground in terms of the progress that were made. So she talked about how much young women are affected by this pandemic. You know, from the beginning of the pandemic on the continent, women and young girls were really part of the vulnerable population. But today, it's even still a reality, despite all the messages, all the awareness campaigns that are out there, speaking to young women and boys as well, to protect themselves and to be more careful. But she says that young girls are vulnerable because of issues such as poverty. They don't also have much saying when they are in a relationship, and they become victim of people that are taking advantage of them because they have money or they have power. So you see this big number, this huge number of young girls that are HIV positive when we look at new infections. So that was really something that she emphasized that needs to be addressed.
Now this AIDS conference just wrapped up in Canada. What exactly came out of it? You know, because one thing I'd always wondered about, especially during the pandemic, when all the focus was on the coronavirus and fighting this pandemic, there was this other one that was the big pandemic even before. I come from South Africa, I reported on this for many years, where we did have a problem with HIV and the spread of it. And for a while it seemed like there was much progress being made, but then COVID-19 hit. Where exactly is the fight against HIV/AIDS right now?
That's one of the challenges, right? COVID-19 really took away the attention. It shifted the attention from issues like HIV/AIDS. So yes, people that are on the front when it comes to the fight against HIV/AIDS, whether it's patients or doctors, they are all saying one thing. COVID took a lot of attention, and the resources are lacking, you know. There is not enough resources, whether it's financial, whether it's human resources, and also all the tools that are needed, that patients need, are not readily available. In many cases, supply chain was a problem. Money is always a challenge. So Winnie Byanyima spoke about that, the access to treatment, the access to prevention tools are also lacking. So there are many issues that needs to be tackled, and COVID has come and really kind of wiped out many of the progress that were made.
Well, I hope that we can get more from that interview at some other point. Lenore Madu, the consummate professional, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. I'm going to go back to that story from well, it looks like we're going to have to end the show there. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to watch all of our VOA Africa programs on voaafrica.com. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.